Continuing with our wall-to-wall coverage on the SABC throughout the morning, we really have been bringing you live visuals in the build-up to that funeral that's taking place for the late Nathi Mthethwa. We have got our anchors, we've got our reporters on the ground with that. Bongiwe, I'm going to hand back to you and Sophie. Perhaps from your vantage point, tell us what's happening as his body leaves the homestead.
And Liesel, as we watch those visuals there of the body leaving the homestead, mourners are also gathering here to pay their respects, just as we anticipating that the funeral service will be starting at 9 o'clock. We do have with us the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Thami Ntuli, who is going to be sharing his reflections of the life of the late ambassador. Ndunankulu, sibonga kakhulu ngesikhathi sakho namhlanje. Asiqale nje with just the reflections, because this is someone you've described as a visionary leader.
Yes, I agree quite well with everyone who's saying so. In particular, when it comes to peace in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, Unyambozo played a massive but quietly a role of ensuring that there is peace and stability in the province. Hence, we are the beneficiaries of that kind of peace. And we have taken that forward, wherein you see the IFP and the ANC working together, even in the government operational unit, and in some of the local municipalities, also at a national level. You'll recall that the late Prince Mangosuthu in fact was advocating for reconciliation between the two political parties, and we are taking that one forward. Hence, Unyambozo was also contributing quite strategic in ensuring that that is achieved. At the same time, advancing the agenda of development for the country and the province of KwaZulu-Natal.
Premier, you spoke about the unity that's prevailing and the peace that's prevailing in KwaZulu-Natal. In terms of what he fought for, yes, in some instances there were mistakes along the way, because all human beings, we do commit mistakes. But the intention for joining the struggle was to ensure that the lives of the majority of this country gets better. Are we on course as a country to address the challenges facing ordinary people? I mean, water, you talk about electricity, you talk about infrastructure. On our way here, I was talking about how ordinary people in KwaZulu-Natal here have built beautiful houses, minus one problem for government. What they need is infrastructure. What's the problem in service delivery generally? How do we ensure that ordinary South Africans in the countryside, particularly as they have done already by building houses, they don't want RDP, they want water, they want reliable electricity, they want roads?
Well, one must say the people of this country, at least they have access to basic services such as water and electricity in their numbers, though there are bottlenecks of the infrastructure that is aging, the infrastructure that is demanded by the increase in the population, wherein as the country we need to ensure that we invest now, not only government, even the private sector, because when you talk about the infrastructure is not for government of ordinary citizens only, but is an enabler to the growth of the economy, for the businesses to flourish. So it's important that we advance now the agenda of development, of ensuring that everything is in order in terms of the services, though we are struggling in certain areas because of municipalities that do not have expertise, of which the agenda of the seventh administration is to ensure that we enhance the viability of local government, so that they are able in fact to strengthen the services that they deliver to our people.
I looked at Richards Bay. This is gold, Premier. Premier, this is gold. If you bring in infrastructure, the harbor, you bring in tourism, the people of this region can have a better life. What is it that you are doing in this region in terms of utilizing this infrastructure, the harbor, to complement other areas of growth for the economy?
Quite soon we'll have more electricity being produced here. There's an LNG gas, which you know, a multi-billion rand project. and there is a new container terminal to a capacity of 200,000 containers into this side of the province. As you'll know, this port is a strategic port in Richards Bay. It's a deep sea wherein the minerals, in fact, are exported, wherein some are imported. So I think there is a lot that is happening here. We're looking forward even to a new airport, the expansion of the airport, including the ICC, International Convention Center, in the very same area. In terms of tourism, I think KwaZulu-Natal has progressed quite significantly. Recently, I saw just in a very short space of time that 3 million local tourists are visiting Durban alone, and more than 200,000 international tourists in Durban alone. You just imagine when you calculate for the whole of KwaZulu-Natal, and I think we have seen that KwaZulu-Natal is the only province that has saw growth in terms of the GDP with 0.8%. When we say our country grew with 0.8%, we are talking about KwaZulu-Natal. That in fact is pointing to a positive direction in terms of our economy and in terms of the opportunities for our people.
And as we're about to let you go, let's circle back to your earlier point. You speak about something Ushenge was talking about, the reconciliation. You say Nyambose played a role in that as well. How are you carving that path going forward?
Well, as we are working together already with the ANC, it's important to continue to sit down so that, in fact, we close the chapter. Because what is important for us is to demonstrate to the entire nation that we acknowledge the mistakes of the past, but now we want to see a united province, united people whose agenda is one, to reshape the future of the province for the sake of our children, for the sake of the nation. Thank you very much.
That is the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Sophie. And it's interesting because as you speak about development, right, it's clear to see that it's going to mean a lot to the people of areas like this. It means a lot when people start to see that services are being delivered. But also, when you listen to some of the people, Sophie, speaking to us about Unyambose, they say he's put the area of Wambonambi on the map.
You are correct. I think a story to be told. It's how in these rural areas, whether you go to Eastern Cape, you go to Limpopo, the countryside, you go to KwaZulu-Natal, how South Africans themselves, because they've been able to educate their children, how they go back and they build beautiful houses, and government can meet them halfway by just providing services. And I think Nyambose would have wanted that, because that's what he fought for, a better life for South Africans. Yes, he had.
And of course, as you speak about that, Sophie, right, we're seeing earlier on some of the visuals from the homestead as the cortege was making its way here. And we are, of course, going to be making the viewers aware that according to the GCI statement, you are going to be seeing some road closures on the way to here, because they want to ensure that traffic is as smooth as possible in order for everyone to be able to get here to the sports complex on time. Also at the same time, just to remind you, this is a funeral where the president is going to be delivering the eulogy. That is President Cyril Ramaphosa, and you do know that this is the special official funeral category 2, with of course some elements performed by the South African Police Service. Sophie?
Yes, you are correct, and we saw the arrival of the Deputy President Paul Mashadile. This is significant because, as I pointed out, in July the DP was in France, where there was this massive investment conference that was organized by the ambassador, taking into consideration that with the challenges the country is facing in relation to trade and investment and agreement AGOA with America, you have to strengthen your investment and bring other countries. Much as South Africa has got strong trade relations with the European Union and member states, but you want to increase those volumes because it's quite important, and therefore it is no surprise that the DP is here, much as yes, he has to travel to Turkey next week, the same mission, trying to scale up the investment and trade volumes with other countries, because we have to close that gap. We don't know with the trade relations 5 months down the line or a year on with America where the country will be, and therefore those road shows are quite critical, and Nyambose playing a role to ensure that there was such an important trade engagement in France in July, while the president was in Washington meeting President Trump.
And you speak about diversification of the markets. It's something that a lot of people have been talking about, even saying that this is time for Africa to rise. It's time for Africa to make sure that infrastructure, as you were alluding to earlier on, is also unlocked, to make sure there's more of the bottlenecks that are removed, to get people and potential investors to come and make things easier for them somewhat. And I suppose, Sophie, as you and I even were talking about Nyambose's wife, she was someone who was also helping to fuel that fire on her own front with him.
Yes, she was a businesswoman, and she had a good business acumen, and therefore that is why she was able to contribute behind the scenes to ensure that the relationship between South Africa and France, it's nurtured. As I pointed out, they went to Monaco. She was supporting the husband, the ambassador, going there to present his credentials, because he was now looking at strengthening the trade relations between South Africa and Monaco. But also, as you speak about the issue of trade, Nyambose would have played an important role to ensure that the French delegation is here during the G20, France being a member of the G20. I'm sure he was lobbying hard that business and officials from France, they honor the commitment to attend that G20 meeting as a diplomat. But turning back to the KZN, I noted the announcement by the Premier about the extension of the airport, the ICC here, and the depot. And we know that since there's been instability in the Red Sea, because of the Middle East question, we see more cargo vessels using South Africa to go to Europe or to go to the East. And therefore these ports are very, very important. It's the opportunity for South Africa to tap into this moment where we are again a gateway or a refreshment station, like in the Cape of Good Hope. But let's hope this time around no one will colonize us like they did.
And as you speak about the issue of, the ports, Sophie, it's also something that has been a headache for President Cyril Ramaphosa, where he has been saying that some of the queues that we do see should not actually be seen. Particularly, you think about the fact that in Richards Bay, remember where there was that queue of trucks that were waiting to be processed, and it does create some kind of bottlenecks, because when you think about, the different investment companies, the different potential investors, and even getting, our own imports out of the country, to send our own minerals to send to other countries, it also does make it difficult if you are not able to free up traffic in that particular area. It has been freed up, but the president saying that this is something that he is hoping that it's actually going to be replicated, and we never see it again. We never have to see ports having so much backlogs. Ships at some point we saw in Durban were struggling to even be processed, and that speaks to some of the things that South Africa needs to put concerted efforts towards. And Sophie, as even we speak today, the different political parties, yes, this is an official government funeral, but there are different political parties who are also here and speaking about a man that they talk about how he was able to go from one side of the room to the next with ease and was able to unite them.
I think our democracy has matured. You have the government of national unity. Clearly those will come. But also you'd expect other political parties who are not necessarily part of the government of national unity to come, because they've interacted with Nathi Mthethwa. Let's take, for example, a party like Umkhonto Wesizwe Party. Majority of members were members of the ANC, so it will not be a surprise if they are here, because they knew Nyambose, they interacted with him in this province and at national level. You take a party like the EFF, Julius Malema, following in the footsteps of Nyambose, taking over the leadership of the Youth League, and of course now after he was expelled, starting his party not by choice because he was expelled. And therefore people are linked, and you can't expect people who knew each other at an hour like this, a moment of grief, not coming to say rena lelona sizokhala nani inhlungu lezi enizizwayo nathi siyazizwa. Ngakho ke silinde ukuthi ke kube khona nabanye abantu abezayo bamanye amaqembu ho tla mona ho tlo tshidisa hobane dipolitiki tsa Afrika Borwa di tile jwale. There's political tolerance.
And I can see, not very far from where we are, Simphiwe Makhanya is on standby with the Deputy Minister of Social Development, that is Hanif Hendricks. Simphiwe, if you can hear us, we of course are still getting a lot of reaction to the passing of Nyambose.